Hey guys, and welcome back to Her Revision Podcast, a podcast for women who are rewriting the stories that they tell themselves and that the world tells them. And today is bittersweet because this is season 2, you guys. This is the season 2 finale. This journey has been so real, and I wanted to close out this episode or this season with something that has been close to my heart. And I know that I've talked about self-doubt, I've talked about fear, I've talked about overthinking and all of that on my episodes, but specifically for this one is going to hit different because this season has been about stepping into my spot, owning my seat at the table, even when I don't feel that I'm ready. So let's get into it. This episode was actually inspired by Kyra Unique. If you don't know who she is a influencer, a beauty vlogger, whatever you want to call her. But she did a sit down video about not letting your mind trick you out your spot. And I wanted to do something a little bit inspired by that because that has really been my theme lately. So this episode is called Your Seat at the Table is Reserved. And I want y'all to sit with that for a second. That seat is yours. The name is on it. It's waiting for you. But whether or not you sit down is all up to you. It's your choice. So let's talk about what it means to own your spot. What does that mean? To stop letting your anxiousness, the fear, the projection push you away from what is meant for you. So let's keep it real, right? Have you ever sat back and realized how comfortable, and I mean how comfortable fear can feel? Fear feels so comfortable when you don't realize that is the emotion that's taking over you. Like it's like an old friend that pops up out of nowhere, uninvited, but you don't kick them out because you're so used to their presence. That's me right now. That's literally how I've been feeling. And I've had moments where I didn't even realize that I was sitting in fear because it didn't feel like what it was. To me, I was so used to feeling like fear has to be loud. It has to be outright. It has to be something that's in my face. And it wasn't some big dramatic thing that was yelling to me like, you can't do this. No, it was quiet. It was sneaky. It sounded like caution, like cautionary thoughts that were popping up in my mind. Maybe you should wait, Jazz. You're not ready yet, Jazz. What if you fail? Sneaky, y'all. And because it wasn't super loud, because it wasn't screaming at me, I did not recognize it for what it was. I did not see it as fear. I labeled it other things, or I inserted other emotions to try to justify why fear was what it was or what I thought it wasn't. But here's the thing about fear, right? It does not have to be loud to hold you back. And I've said this on countless episodes before. What I've learned this season is that you cannot wait for fear to leave before you move. There have been so many things that I feel like God has called me for, but that doesn't mean that because I've been called to it, that the fear will remove itself, that it will part ways for me to walk through untouched. Oh no. The fear's gonna come through swinging because it's sneaky. It's not gonna pack its bags. It's not gonna leave. It's not gonna say, okay, you're good now, I'll leave you alone. It stays. It lingers. But you literally have to act anyway. For me, I always thought about it like for fear. You're walking into a dark room. You don't stand there waiting for the light to come on first. You move. You have to feel your way forward. You have to push through that darkness until you're able to turn the light switch on. So let's talk about anxiousness, right? Because that is one of the emotions that I feel like I've been facing lately. And my best friend was the one who pointed it out to me. And I was like, wow, I did not realize how loud it's been for me. How anxious I've become over the years. Or no, let me take that back. I think I've always had a little bit more anxiousness in me than most. But I think it's been so outright, like I can see it in me more so than I ever did. And anxiousness does come when it comes to stepping into your spot. It does rear its head. Because for me, anxiousness doesn't always look like hesitation. Because when I thought, oh, you're being anxious, oh, you're being hesitant. No, sometimes it looks like me finding flaws in everything and everyone around me. And that's what my best friend pointed out to me. She was like, I feel like you're anxious right now, because she noticed that I started nitpicking. Let me break it down for y'all, right? For example, when I'm dating, prime example, when I'm dating, I'll meet a guy, right, who seems super promising. He seems like he's a good guy. Everything is just meshing well together. He's funny, he's kind, he's consistent. But instead of just letting it flow, oh, Jasmine's going to pick it apart. Jasmine's going to nitpick. He doesn't text the way that I like. He says this thing that's annoying. He's too into his hobbies. He's probably not going to have enough time for me. He's not serious enough. He plays too much. Before I know it, I've already convinced myself that he's not it. After 1 week, this ain't for me. And that's not to say that everybody that you come in contact with when it comes to dating, you have to give this long, drawn out chance to. No. But what I realized is I did that not because there was something wrong with him, but because I'm scared. I'm scared to let him in. I'm scared to take the risk of being vulnerable, because I know that with being vulnerable, I've been hurt. I've failed. And it's not just about dating. I've done this at work too. If a project feels overwhelming, my first instinct is to point out everything that's wrong. My boss isn't clear enough. She doesn't give good direction. This process is super unorganized. How am I supposed to succeed if this feels so chaotic? This is too hard. I just learned to do this. Why are y'all throwing this at me? Why are you giving me this much responsibility? But is it really about the job, Jazz? Like, is it really about the job? Or is it about me being afraid that I'm not good enough to handle it? Is it about me being afraid that if I fail, people are going to look at me like I'm less than? The truth that I had to face, right, is that sometimes the flaws that we see in other people or our situations are really just reflections of our own fears. And instead of us projecting, we've got to confront that all that we're saying, all that we're putting in the universe, all of that we're pushing onto other people is really what's going on inside of us. Let me just get into the heart of this, right? When it comes to owning your spot. Just because something doesn't feel seamless does not mean that it's not for you. It does not mean that it's not yours. I used to think that if something was meant for me, then it would feel easy, that it would feel effortless. But alignment does not always look like ease. And I just want here, alignment does not always look like immediate success. Right? Sometimes it stretches you. Sometimes it makes you uncomfortable. More times than not, it makes you uncomfortable. And when I first started this podcast, I didn't feel ready. I had doubts about my voice. I had doubts about whether or not people would understand what I'm trying to say. If maybe it was a fluke because I had been getting, accolades and people loving my videos on TikTok. But could I really translate that same success in a podcast? Would people listen? And every time something went wrong, like an episode flopped that I thought was going to really do well, or the statistics weren't that good, I had tech issues, my editing wasn't the greatest, I'd think like, see, this is the shit I'm talking about. Maybe this not for me. Maybe, my podcast isn't going to do as well as other people's are. Everybody else's may have better outcomes or, better quality than I do. Maybe this isn't for me. Well, let me tell y'all something. If the door opens, and I was talking to my therapist about this, and it really just clicked for me. If the door opens, it's because you're supposed to walk through it. Even if it's hard, even if it's messy, even if you don't feel 100% ready, if that door opens, it was meant for you to walk through. The same goes for dating, especially for me. And I'm going back to dating because it's such a prominent thing in my life that I'm really proud of myself for even stepping into again this year. But there's this narrative in my head sometimes that says you'll be ready for a relationship when you're fully healed and you're fully whole. But let's be for real. Let's be very honest. What I'm learning is that readiness, to be ready for something, does not mean that it's going to be perfect. I may feel like maybe I'm ready to start back dating, but that doesn't mean that because I've made the decision to do so, that every decision or every outcome or every situation based on that decisiveness at that moment is going to be perfect, is going to be right, is going to feel as though all the cards are aligning. To be ready means that you're showing up, even with the baggage that you have, even with fears that you may have. To be ready means that you're showing up. It doesn't mean that everything will be perfect. And when it comes to work, like y'all, I've had to remind myself over and over and over again. And then I'm talking work, my 9 to 5. I'm talking my passion project, this podcast. I've had to remind myself over and over that just because it's hard doesn't mean that I'm in the wrong place. It doesn't mean that it's not meant for me. It doesn't mean that God didn't call me to do this, right? So let's just shift gears for a second and talk about grace. Because if you have been listening to my podcast for a while, I always talk about grace. It is one of the things that I love so much that I discovered fully in the last couple of years, is to give myself grace, whether that is people or it's myself. For so long, I felt like grace was something that you give to others, but I've realized it's just as important to give it to yourself. And that has been a recurring theme for me, especially this year. Because I used to think that if this relationship or this job or this situation isn't perfect, then it's not for me. And the way that those type of thoughts will really, truly take you by the throat and squeeze. Life is not about perfection, guys. It's about growth. Being able to grow from things that used to be so different for you, that your thought process used to. It's about rewriting that narrative that you tell yourself, that the world tells you, right? Giving yourself grace means allowing room for mistake. It's okay to make them, because grace tells me that although I have made mistakes, but that I'll keep trying. I'll keep showing up for myself, even if it's hard. That doesn't mean that I'm failing. It just means that it's hard. That seat at the table is yours. It has your name on it, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be super easy to pull out the chair. That seat at that table is made of cherry oak. That table is very expensive. Therefore, that chair is very expensive. That wood is heavy. Heavy that wears the crown, if you will. It's not going to be easy, but that doesn't mean that it's not meant for you. And then when it comes to giving grace to others, like, that one is tough too. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not tough to give, because some people have it where they're able to give themselves grace, but when it comes to extending that same thing to others, because they feel like they had to get it out the mud by themselves and they had to really put in the work and they had to damn near be perfect, that when it comes to giving people grace, it's hard. But I've learned that not every flaw from somebody is a red flag, y'all. And I'm not saying this in a way where I am trying to get you to think that I've mastered this. I just failed at this yesterday. I just judged somebody off of a flaw that they can't control yesterday. But I do think that giving grace to others is just a reminder that people in life is not perfect. It is imperfect. It is beautifully crafted to be imperfect. So I want you to take a moment to really allow yourself to grasp the concept of how to reclaim your spot, right? How do you reclaim your spot when it comes to fear and anxiety or projection trying to push you out of that seat? So I did make a list for you guys, because I wouldn't be me if I didn't give you a list of things to help you reclaim your spot. The first thing is to call out that fear. Don't let it sit quietly in the back of your mind. Don't let those negative thoughts and those projections don't let it just sit there. Name it. Say it. I see it. I see you. Whatever that fear may be, I see it. But you are not running the show. You are not going to trick me out my spot. The second thing is to take it one step at a time, because so many people think that when it comes to not letting your mind trick you out your spot, when it comes to owning your seat at the table, that means that it's as soon as you make the decision, snap, crackle, pop, boom, you got it. You're healed. You own it, not you. That seat at the table, you fully click. Come on, let's be for real. You don't have to see the whole path, though. More times than not, you won't. But just take the next step. Keep pushing. regardless. The third thing is, when you do take that next step, when you do keep pushing, focus on progress. Don't focus on perfection. Don't focus on every move that you make next being the perfect right choice. Just focus on being better than the last day or the last time that you were, or the last time you did it. Focus on your focus. Focus on perfecting the craft, not making the right perfect decision, but focus on improvement, right? Celebrate your small wins. You showed up. That's a win. You tried. That's a win. Even if you failed, if you got back up, a win. And then the fourth thing, and the most important thing to me, especially this year, because I think that I've had to lean on my tribe. That's the fourth thing, y'all. Lean on your tribe. I've had to lean on my tribe a lot this year. And sometimes you just need people to remind you of who you are and what you are capable of and what God has called you to be. Don't be afraid to ask for that. Don't be afraid to open your mouth and say that you need help, that you need people, that you need your community. Because a lot of the times, if I've realized nothing, and it just happened to me a couple of days ago, when you decide to stick to your own thoughts because you don't want to be vulnerable, you don't want to let all of these random crazy thoughts of yours or these fears or whatever you're projecting, you don't want to talk about it to other people. And that's me. That is me in a lot of different ways. But what I'm realizing is I can't keep it all to myself. Because my thoughts ain't always the smartest. My thoughts aren't always what's going to help me with growth. Sometimes the things that I'm thinking of and the ideas that I have in my head are fear. They're rooted in that. And when you do have a tribe and you have people around you that care about you and want to see you grow and do well, they're able to point that out. And they're able to say like, yeah, you might be tripping. You might be tripping just a little. So lean on your tribe. Those are the four things that I just want y'all to take note of. And as I look back on this season, if I could think of one word that keeps coming to my mind, it's resilience. We've talked about overcoming self-doubt. We've talked about navigating transitions. We've talked about leaning into growth the entire season. And every episode has been a stepping stone towards this moment, towards resilience. You getting back up regardless of how many times you've been knocked down. You getting back up regardless of how many times you've been scared. If you take one thing away from season 2, let it be this: you deserve to be here. You deserve to take up space. Take it up. Be big. Be bold. You deserve to claim what's yours. It's not too much for you because you're built for this. That seat is yours. Okay, you guys, that is a wrap, y'all. Cheers to season 2. Thank you for rocking with me this season of Her Revision Podcast. This journey has been nothing short of amazing for me. It's been very transformative, and it's been about growth. It's been about resilience and stepping into your spot unapologetically. Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to be anything, I'm going to be unapologetic. Because I want to rewrite my story over and over and over and over and over again. Until season 3 is coming, you guys. And I promise we are taking it to the next level. I have so many ideas. And you just never know, right? Until then, I just want you to remember that you belong here. And your seat is already reserved. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're listening to me on YouTube. Don't forget to rate the podcast. Follow the podcast if you're listening to me on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you stream. Don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter, y'all, where I give y'all a little piece of my mind like all the time when I can. Sometimes I have a lot going on up in this head of mine, as y'all can tell. And I do a little bit more digging and just being a little bit of a diary sometimes in my newsletter. So go ahead and subscribe to that because more and new and better is coming. Until next time, I love you guys. Bye.